business owners who've run their business for 30 to 40 years, they think of this business as their baby. And so it's really hard to sort of set the valuation multiples where someone may think that their business is 10x or 15x worth more than it actually is in terms of numbers. So walking them through the process and explaining it, that's something that we sort of struggle to automate. And we've really tried to automate certain parts of the conversation and things like that, but it doesn't really work that way. It takes a lot of negotiation, a lot of back and forth.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Today we have a special guest, Trisha Gulati. Trisha, thanks for jumping on. Where are you calling from today?
Thank you for having me on, Art. It's a pleasure. I'm calling in from New York, so I'm up here in Manhattan. Yeah. Mhm.
Sounds good. You've built software at Thai Crypto Exchange, done investment banking, worked in AI, and now you're in ML engineering at M&A firm. Most people pick a lane. What's the thread that connects all of those together?
I think for me, it's the fact that I always knew I wanted to get into the M&A space. Going into business, having a mentor from San Diego who I visited all the time about closing deals. But what I really wanted to have was the hard skills, the technical hard skills that would allow me to be in the space and find sort of partners in the space at the time I'm at. So I think just bridging both of them together was something that I always wanted to do, and I thought that yeah. So that's like why I'm here today, pretty much.
Sound good. So most M&A firms are still running on spreadsheets and gut instinct. What does it actually mean to bring machine learning into the environment? What does Trisha's work change about how MergeWorks operates?
I think one of the main things is, I'm sure you know this, but it can take months to close an M&A deal,
Yes.
from start to finish, all the way from, talking to a business owner. Then the longest or hardest part is pretty much doing the due diligence aspect of things. And that, involves accountants, legal team. It involves so many different people to get through to the due diligence of closing one deal itself. And my partners and I, we wanted to really close deals at scale. So the goal was what I pretty much did was built a software that allowed us to do our due diligence, valuation, and everything based on our acquisition criteria. So at first glance, when we get a deal, it automates the scoring. It tells us if it's a fit at first glance or not. And then once we start going to do due diligence, we pretty much have a software built that tells us all the red flags of the deal, all the green flags, how much we should value it at. And this is all based on past data pretty much. So it can do that. Obviously, we wouldn't just rely on that 100%, but it can pretty much do that and save us a lot of time in the due diligence process, which can take like up to 2 months a lot of times, if not longer. Yeah.
That's impressive. Thank you. Let's see. AI is hitting every industry right now, but M&A has been slower to adopt than most. Where's the biggest inefficiency in the deal making process? That automation is finally starting to fix.
I think I mentioned this briefly before, but I think the due diligence process is tough because, you take on a lot of risk when you buy a business. If the business has liabilities, you take that on. If the business has any sort of risk involved in it, and you are the buyer of that business, then you would have to pay for that risk in the end. So every person or private equity firm or any M&A company who's looking to do due diligence understands that they need to take a lot of time to be able to do that and avoid the risks that, they can avoid pretty much. Yeah. So that's why I think that automation is now a big part of changing that scope, or making it faster at least.
Oh, definitely. You've got Chien bringing the operator and deal experience, Maple bringing the global marketing intelligence, and you bringing the technical infrastructure. How does that three-way collaboration actually work in practice?
I think it works extremely well because both Chien and Maple have 20 plus years of business background, where Chien has focused a lot on bootstrapping businesses from the ground up. Maple has spent a lot of time in the marketing space, focusing on consulting marketing, and has pretty much grown all of their businesses, being able to use that skill. And then what they felt like, at least when they met me, they were missing was the part of things that can allow us to do deals at scale, which is automate the process. And this doesn't just mean the process of M&A, doesn't mean the process of closing a deal, but it also means the process of scaling a business once it's in your portfolio. As you probably know, there's a lot of automation involved in that. So that's a very, very significant part, especially where we are today. where a lot of businesses are completely transforming their systems using AI and automation. And so that's a significant part, but I think also having that experience to negotiate and to understand how to really talk to a business owner is still very significant because you can't just you can't just automate that whole process. It is someone's baby. They've been running it for sometimes 30 to 40 years, and there's a lot of emotion attached to the business. And so all of these skills together that three of us have, I think combines really well because we each know what we can do in every possible scenario that we have and how we can fix any bottleneck or any problem we have as it comes along.
Cool. So you got a background in crypto, e-commerce, AI, and traditional finance. That's a rare mix of worlds. What does each of those teach you about how automation should and shouldn't be applied in business growth context?
I think when you're thinking about just sort of applying what you've learned in different scenarios, the reason that I worked in multiple different firms, like I worked in a fashion company, crypto company, is that you can be a software engineer in all of those companies. You can program, build all these things, but what it really takes, how the environment is completely different. And I think you learn so much from each of these different scenarios that can allow you to sort of bring it be an adaptable and bring it to, like let's say now it's my own business. So you bring each of these different skills that you've learned to adapt, but as a software engineer or as someone who focuses on programming into every different industry. And I think that's something interesting because as a company, we don't necessarily focus on one specific industry, and every industry is completely different. We're very focused on the consumer vertical space, but even so, in those spaces, every industry runs completely differently and doesn't have the same sort of systems built into it. So it's just important to be adaptable. And I think having worked in multiple different industries, it allows me to sort of be adaptable to every company that we bring into our portfolio and, what we're sort of navigating in the machine learning space. But yeah.
Thanks for sharing. So, one second. So, MergeWorks serves three types of clients. That's business that wants to grow, business that wants to buy, and business that wants to exit. From a technology and data standpoint, which of those three is the most complex to build system for and why?
I think I think it's echoing a little bit, but buy buying and selling, I would say it's a very similar process for every type of business. So I think, if you want to buy a business, I think if we wanted to have a if we wanted to bring someone on who's looking to buy a business, the process would be fairly similar for someone who wanted to buy, a securities company or for someone who wanted to buy an e-commerce company. It wouldn't be that different in terms of the red flags, like what you're looking for and things like that. And the same goes with selling. I think, it's I wouldn't say it's straightforward, but I think, when you value a company, you look at their EBITDA and their SDE and you give it a valuation multiple that can fit. And I think that again, that works similarly for every industry. But I think when it comes to growing a company, that definitely is the most complex because not only do you have to understand the systems of the company and how they operate and who the types of clients are, but you also have to work with the owner. You have to make sure that, at least what we do is we try to preserve their legacy. We don't just completely focus on you know, trying to we don't just completely focus on trying to maximize profit and things like that, but we do really try to maintain the owner's legacy, the owner's vision, what they want to do, whether it's as a growth partner or as somebody who wants to sell their business to us. Either way, I think and every company's the way they operate their systems is completely different. But I think, in buying and selling, the process can be fairly similar for every type of company. So I think it's just about when it comes to growth partners, we pretty much always, every time we bring on a company that we're partnered with, we're navigating a whole new space. So I'd say that's why it's the most complicated.
So you got Chien bringing the operator and deal experience, Maple bringing the global marketing experience, and you're bringing the technical infrastructure. How does that three-way collaboration work in practice?
So normally when we bringing in a deal, sometimes it's sourced automatically. Sometimes it's a referral or someone in Chien and Maple's network. It could be either one, but when we bring a deal in, usually the first call is set with Chien, and he's the person who evaluates, the person that we're working with, evaluates the business. Is this really a good fit for us? And then from there, the system to, bringing that roadmap together. Maple thinks through a lot of the marketing side of things. How are we going to create the roadmap in terms of where could this business go in the next like 3 to 5 years on in terms of marketing and sales. And Chian normally brings in that view in terms of operation. And then that roadmap and is pretty much built through the system that I built. So that's how then once we have the roadmap set, then negotiations and things like that are usually conducted by Chien. But in terms of the due diligence systems built, they're usually done by the system that I built. So that's sort of how our three-way collaboration works. And we also have we have a team of associates working with us. And normally when it's our internal team, that's mainly handled by me. When it's outsourced by in terms of clients and other things, that's usually handled by Chia and Maple. So yeah, that's sort of how we separate our work, but we have different strengths, so we know when someone can solve a problem. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
What's working really well inside MergeWorks right now? And where is the friction you're actively trying to engineer away?
I think what's working well is that I don't think bringing deals in is as hard as we initially expected or brought it out to be. I think, especially when that whole part of the system is automated, I think sourcing deals and bringing in good deals is something that we've managed to really figure out. And part of it is from our team, and part of it is from the systems we built all together. I think we sort of it took us some time, but I think we navigated and found the right path to getting good deals that really fit our acquisition criteria. Mhm.
Uh, can you elaborate more on the friction, like something you're trying to engineer away?
The friction that we're facing at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think some of the bigger challenges, which again is something that is really difficult to engineer, is the negotiation process. And that's because two things I would say. One is the negotiation process, and that's because business owners who've run their business for 30 to 40 years, they think of this business as their baby. And so it's really hard to sort of set the valuation multiples where someone may think that their business is 10x or 15x worth more than it actually is in terms of numbers. So walking them through the process and explaining it, that's something that we sort of struggle to automate. And we've really tried to automate certain parts of the conversation and things like that, but it doesn't really work that way. It takes a lot of negotiation, a lot of back and forth. One of our deals took, I think, about 8 months to close of back and forth. So that's something that it's just not easy, and it does bring a lot of friction. It takes time. And the second thing I would say is the legal process. That's something, if I think if once AI systems get better, and I know a lot of people are really building and focusing on the legal space because it's one of the hardest things to automate. But as I mentioned before, there's a lot of risk involved when it comes to buying a business. So if you don't get the contracts done right, the terms, the legal side of things done right or done professionally, it could complicate things for you as the owner of the business in the long term. So I'd say these are the two things that have the most friction and are something that we'd love to engineer, especially the legal side of things, but it is still difficult for us at the moment to do that.
Okay. Where does MergeWorks need its technology animation? Okay. Sorry, I'll just start over. Where does MergeWorks need its technology animation to be in the next 6 to 12 months to support where the business is heading?
I think one thing that needs to happen, I think I mentioned a bit, so I won't dive too deep into it, but is the legal side of things. If contracts and term sheets and things like that, LOI, drafts and things could be automated without huge risk of buying a bad business and taking on a lot of liability. If that could happen, and that's I think hopefully what I see in the next 4 to 6 months, a lot of people are really working on legal, building up the legal AI. And legal automation, and I think it's going somewhere. It just isn't there yet. And the second part I would say is I think really at the moment, we're able to automate a lot of workflows. We're able to automate the foundations of our business and build softwares and things like that. But where we need to be is we need to have our brains as the owners, brains of industry experts, into the foundations of the machines and the systems that we're building so that everything that runs on a day to day can run on top of that. And I know a lot of companies have been working on it, building it, and that's very important step of where we are headed and hope to be in the next 4 to 6 months as well.
Cool. Let's see. MergeWorks needs to find business owners who are ready to grow, buy, and exit. That's a pretty specific buyer. How is MergeWorks currently identifying and reaching those people at scale, and where does cold outreach fit into that?
So there's multiple different ways it can be done, and some of the ways that have worked well for us is on market deals, because if you go on biz buy sell, if you go on different markets, if you sort of auto source from there, it makes things pretty quick because you already know that that person is looking to sell their business and is looking to exit. The only struggle with that is that there are brokers involved. So it's not always the easiest way to close a deal. It's much better to speak directly with the owner. But some other ways that we also source deals at scale outside of referrals is LinkedIn Sales Navigator. So automatically searches for deals in our acquisition criteria that we're looking for in terms of revenue, in terms of industry. All those types of things are pretty much set in stone for us, and we score it. And then another way is also through, Google Maps API pretty much. If we're looking at a certain geography, like I live in New York, my partners live in California, and our business is based in Dallas. So we do a lot of Google Map and web scraping of businesses we're looking for in those specific regions, because they're businesses that we can easily do diligence of. We live there, and we can just more easily monitor them. So that's also another way that we source deals at scale. But yeah, it's pretty much workflows built and scored from each of these different things.
Uh, do you use any cold email outreach like Instantly or Quizity?
We actually don't that much. If we find a business that, we like an associate does, they just reach out. We don't use those tools at the moment. We just build workflows that send emails out on its own.
Okay.
Mhm.
So AI voice agents are getting very good very fast, to the point
Yeah.
where most people can't tell they're talking to a bot. I actually had a funny story from one of the guys that I interviewed. They deployed agents, voice agents, inbound call
Yeah.
voice agents to
Yeah.
shops. And I think I mentioned that story before, right? Yeah. So
Uh,
basically, the bot they deployed, the people
yeah.
it was kind of so realistic that the people, when they were calling in the bot, they started talking to him like they're real human. They're like, "Oh, how are your kids? How's your wife? How's the weather?" And then after a while, they realized that they're talking to a bot, and they felt really stupid. So that company had to downgrade the realism of speech to sound more bot-like,
Mm.
basically. So where do you see the line between where the AI agent should be deployed in a sales process and where a human still has to be in the seat?
Uh, I think especially in initial conversations, I think it's still okay. It's still okay for an AI to be very involved in, especially when you're just scoring a deal, you're just trying to get the initial information out of it. I don't think that it's completely necessary for a human to be involved in that, but I think once you dive really deep into what the owner is looking for, just preserving their legacy, and I would say that the line is a little bit difficult here because you're talking to owners who've been running the same business for the past like 30 to 40 years. And so, if you have a bot that's talking to them, even if it sounds real, it's still a little bit, I would say it's still a little bit challenging. And I think that's why, as you mentioned, M&A is one of the slowest to really adopt AI, because the process has a lot of emotion involved in it, has a lot of due diligence involved in it, and just things that take a lot of time. It's a very high risk industry. So I think there's still a large human element involved in it. And I think it will be around for a long time, especially, whilst the main people that we're talking to are boomers looking to sell their businesses, looking to retire and exit. And definitely from what I've experienced, none of them would want to speak to a bot at any point in time. So, or at least like I haven't experienced that yet. But, maybe when it comes down to other generations looking to sell their businesses, it might be different. And I don't think that that's not possible. I just think it hasn't gone there yet. So I think in the very initial phase, it's still an option, but the whole point of it is you're building a relationship, you're building trust. And so if you don't have that from the get-go, if you're, using bots to speak for you, it's usually going to be a tough sell. Yeah, that's the way I see it right now.
That's if the people speaking to the bot realize it's a bot. There's
That's
a
true.
lot of
That
a
is.
lot of
That
them not even
is.
realize it's a bot.
No, that
Yeah.
is.
Let's see here. I got about 5 minutes left. Well, I just want to say the following. Trisha, this has been a really sharp conversation. The combination of technical depth and real world deal making context you bring to the merge works is not something you see very often. Now, so I do a summary once we've compiled this series. This one will land well with anyone building it. An intersection of tech and business growth.
Okay.
Trisha, Thank you for joining the podcast. That was an absolute pleasure having you on. And yeah, hopefully have a fantastic long weekend.
Thank you, you too. I appreciate you inviting me on. Yeah. Have a good one.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.